Good afternoon, friends. It's Thursday, February 4th. Time for a reflection. On February 4th, 1906, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his twin sister Sabine were born into an amazing family. Dietrich's father was a psychiatrist, I have to make sure I say that word right, and a neurologist. His mother was a teacher, and she was the granddaughter of a famous Protestant German theologian. Now, it's said that the family had mixed faith. Carl, the dad, was not very active in his faith. In fact, maybe not even a believer at all. But Paula, the mom, was. And she taught her kids the Bible, about Jesus, and about faith. Dietrich and Sabine were 2 of 8 children. His oldest brother became a chemist. The next oldest brother died in World War I. 2 of his sisters married men who were executed by the Nazis, and one of those sisters was also imprisoned but survived. His other 2 sisters married men who were anti-Hitler, but they survived that time period. And of course, Dietrich was arrested and executed by the Nazi government, but more about that a little bit later. This entire Bonhoeffer family was adamant in their rejection of Hitler and his cult of personality. Bonhoeffer's story is quite fascinating to me. From an early age, it's said that he announced he wanted to become a theologian, just like his great-grandfather. Now, I've always wondered how an elementary school-aged child decides that he wants to be a theologian. He must have been very motivated as well, because he finished his education, university and seminary, before he was 21 years old. And so, not being old enough to be ordained at that time, he enrolled himself in a Doctor of Theology program at Berlin University. It was while in that program, in fact 1930 to be exact, that he came to the United States and he studied at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. And he had what might have been one of the greatest and most informative life and faith transformation moments ever. He became friends with a black seminarian who introduced him to a Baptist church in Harlem. There, Bonhoeffer taught Sunday school, and he formed a lifelong love of African American spirituals, including taking a collection of them with him when he went back to Germany. He became sensitive to not only the social injustices experienced by, as he said, minorities, but also the ineptitude of the church to bring about integration. In all of these years, 90 years almost? More? How have we in the Lutheran Church in the United States progressed in this integration moment? Not very well, I fear. Bonhoeffer began to see things from the perspective of those who suffered oppression. He observed, quote, "Here one can truly speak and hear about sin and grace and the love of God. The black Christ is preached with rapturous passion and vision," unquote. In 1931, he returned to Germany to finish his doctorate and was ordained in November of that year. His career was altered greatly just 14 months later when the Nazis came into power in Germany. From the very beginning, he stood in opposition to the regime. 2 days after Hitler took control, Bonhoeffer was giving a radio address in which he was warning the people against slipping into that cult of personality that Hitler was demanding. When all of a sudden the program went dead. Coincidence? Not likely. In April of 1933, Bonhoeffer was one of the first to raise his voice within the church to resist Hitler's persecution of the Jews. And you know how well that went, don't you? He became part of the Confessing Church, a breakaway from the larger Protestant church in Germany, which, by the way, was mostly what we would call Lutheran pastors and congregations. Now, the break was over a series of issues, or a number of issues, I should say, including allegiance to Hitler, the Aryan paragraph, which said that any pastor with any kind of, quote, Jewish blood, unquote, would be removed from their congregations, as well as an effort to remove the entire Old Testament from the Bible, because it was seen as Jewish scripture. Now, while the Confessing Church may have only represented about 20% of the pastors and congregations of the day, it was a powerful witness for ages to come. Bonhoeffer continued his campaign against Nazi atrocities for the rest of his life. He came back to the U.S. because people were afraid he would be killed, and he agreed to run away for a bit. But he was only here for a short time, less than a month, I believe, before he said to his friends, "I need to go back. I need to be in Germany fighting with my friends rather than being safe here." It says volumes about the man's conviction. When he returned to Germany, he also got involved with a plot to kill Hitler later during World War II. He had hoped that by getting rid of Hitler, the war would end, the Allies would come more quickly to save the German people, and less folks would die. Now, when that attempt failed, the Gestapo arrested and executed many of those who were involved immediately. Bonhoeffer was arrested, but not executed right away. He was held in a prison in Berlin for a long time, about 18 months or so, and then sent to 2 different concentration camps before he was finally hanged on April 9, 1945. Bonhoeffer was a theologian and a pastor all the way through life. While in prison in Berlin, he witnessed to the guards and other prisoners. While in concentration camps, he led worship services. He always put Christ first, even when he might have been afraid. It was reported that as he concluded the service on Sunday, April 9th, and the guards came to lead him away to his hanging, he paused for a moment to talk to a prisoner from England, asking if that prisoner would give a message to a bishop friend of his in England, if the prisoner was lucky enough to survive. Don't know if that message ever got to the bishop. But Bonhoeffer, seemingly always thinking about someone else. Now, I first came into contact with the writings of Dietrich Bonhoeffer during my second year at seminary, when a classmate of mine said something about him in class. I'd never heard the name before. That seemed odd now that I think back on it. And so after class, I started a conversation with my unnamed classmate. Who is this guy? What's so important about him? What do you know? And he encouraged me to read Cost of Discipleship, my first Bonhoeffer book. That began a decades-long quest to read more and to understand this man of deep faith. He has influenced me in so many ways. His books, Cost of Discipleship, Letters from Prison, which were smuggled out of the prison in Berlin mostly by his fiancée. His book, Life Together, which is the story of the seminary that he created within the Confessing Church. And his book on Psalms are just a few of the books that I have cherished. His advocacy for inclusiveness and standing with and for the oppressed has influenced how I see others as well. His family was a model of acceptance as well as conviction. He knew what he believed in. He expressed that belief with strength, even when others were not showing the same strength or conviction. Perhaps the greatest lesson that I have learned from him is that, as a pastor, Christ must remain the focus of my faith and my actions. It is Christ alone who is in charge of the church. It is Christ alone who dictates, if you will, how I understand and see things. It is Christ alone who guides my thoughts, as Bonhoeffer would say. Dietrich stood firm when those around him were falling into that cult of personality with Hitler. He stood firm in his statements and his public witness of what was and wasn't acceptable and Christ-like. He was willing to offer the greatest sacrifice, his own life, for the sake of others. And I do feel at times that it is easy to go down the road and be with those who are at the top, not be the voice of conscience, just simply accept, to not be too loud in your opposition for fear. Oh, I am afraid sometimes, yes, make no mistake about it. But I try to remember Bonhoeffer. And while some would say, what would Jesus do? I sometimes ask myself, how would Dietrich respond in this moment? What would he do? He would probably say to me, stand up and realize that being a disciple is not the easy way out. It's not the easy road to take. Like Luther, he would say, here I stand, I can do no other, and would encourage me, has encouraged me, to do just the same. Here I stand. Well, sit for the moment, but here I stand in my understanding of oppression and how to speak against it. Discipleship is not the easy road. Bonhoeffer lived it and died with it. I live with it, and hopefully live a long life with it. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, and indeed I will see some of you on Sunday because it's parking lot worship day. So gather in our parking lot at 9:30 a.m. this Sunday, February 7th. Hey, the weather will be a little cool and chilly, like 49 or 50, I think, but no rain. Good news for a Sunday morning. And if you show up, when you show up, please also remember the importance of wearing your mask if you're outside of your car. Just keep that social distance, please. So, for the rest of you, see you on Facebook for worship on Sunday, or YouTube for worship on Sunday. And until then, please, 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 wash your hands a couple times a day, 20 seconds at a crack, and keep them nice and soft by using hand lotion. Do practice that social distancing. Stay 6 feet apart from people. And of course, please wear your masks. I'm seeing some who are now doubling your masks or tripling your masks. I'm still trying to figure that one out for myself, but I do wear my mask when I'm out and about. And as Sergeant Esterhaus dismisses us with those famous words from his speech to the troops, be careful out there.